Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Scott Stanfield, and I am the modern longevitarian. The working title for this show is It's My Friday, and that dates back to all my almost 30 years in the restaurant world. And I'm super excited about today because we're going to have on a special guest, Malia Brown. She's coming up in a couple minutes. And I just want to say we're going to tap into some mental superpowers with brain biohacking, and she is an expert on this. But before we get there, let me talk about the Spirituality Gone Wild, and welcome everybody watching on the Spirituality Gone Wild networks. And also on LinkedIn, we've already got a comment in on LinkedIn. So welcome to the show here. And I want to, there we go. I don't know if I can pronounce that the right way, but thanks for being here and all the hearts and stars and all of those things. And if you're here, just drop us a comment, say hello, and ask any questions along the way, because we're going to go through a very cool process on how to tap into your mental superpowers. But Spirituality Gone Wild has a club called the Untamed Club. And believe it or not, there are over 20 other people just like me that do shows. Some of them may like Steve Weber, who was on the show yesterday. And he has the American Gumption Morning Show 5 days a week. And then the founder of that is Debbie G, or the Gratitude, she has a show. And there's some musicians and mediums and all of these different people that do things. And so I encourage you to join the Untamed Club, and there will be a link either in the show you're watching down in the comments, or I will put it in the show notes after the show is finished. And it is only $22 a month. And there are access to all of us are creating these 5-day programs. So once a month, you get a 5-day training program. And I'm going to develop mine on sleep. It's going to give you how to get the sleep of your dreams. So I encourage you to go do that. And the link will be either in a comment on where you're watching right now. It is on LinkedIn, is on the Modern Longevitarian Facebook page, and also on my profile already. I did it during the intro. And so you can go check there, or I will update that in the comments after the show. But without any further delay, we're going to bring on my dear friend, Malia Brown, to the show. And I got to get over here and make a couple adjustments here. And there she is.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you. It's a great day to be here.
It is. Thank you. Thank you. Soulfireforyou.com, life mastery coach. So tell me a little bit about what it is to be a life mastery coach, and where did you get that? How'd you get started with that?
Well, what I love to do is help people get into their genius zone. So we all have an ability to tap into a higher side of ourself, the dominant nature of ourself that actually can really be a genius nature. And while some of us feel like genius anyway, that's all right. Maybe we have high IQs, or maybe, we're super great at math, or, we're wonderful at how we train our children. There are some additional IQ features that most people don't know about. So I love training people into those genius features, and it's all about the art and the science of getting results. So for me, I'm talking to people about accelerated results. If you have something that's been stuck for a long time, or if you have an initiative that you've been thinking about and you want to bring it into the world right away, it's time, right? It's time, and it doesn't have to take a long time. My job is to do it the fun and easy way. So that's how people find me. They decide they want fun and easy, and sure enough, we get results the fun and easy way.
Well, the world really is on this, like, life is hard and I can't do it, and we have this negative self-talk. How did you, because, you and I have known each other for over 2 years now. How did you get on this fun and easy? I mean, how did you get, because this is like a core belief in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I appreciate that you notice that you notice in the world that we have a tendency as people to say, well, it's hard, or I can't do it because it seems too hard, or maybe I don't have what I need to do it. So it's going to be hard to take the time to research it, or it's going to be hard to do the thing I need to do. And what I know, because of the art and the science of results, is that there's neuro-linguistic programming going on in the brain when we say that. So your brain loves the sound of your voice. It absolutely loves it. There it is. That's right. Your brain's listening for you. And thank you. It stood right up and said, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah. My brain's right here. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happens every time you open your mouth. Every time, and it's funny because we have all these thoughts going on. And of course, a lot of people will talk to you about how to quiet the thoughts. I'm going to talk to you about what happens when you speak to yourself in your own voice. And so that's how in neurolinguistic programming, we know that if we say it's hard, the brain's hardware says, okay, no problem. We'll make it hard. And so rather than seeing the broad scope of what's happening in the subconscious mind or being available to all the information, whether it's 20,000 to 80,000 that we're bringing into the subconscious mind, we're not getting that review from our conscious mind. So maybe we're getting 40,000. It's a big disparity, right? So if we say in neurolinguistic programming, it's hard, then the brain goes, no problem. I'll go looking for how it's hard. And then I'm going to return that to you. And I spent a lot of time in consciousness work training for myself, particularly. I had a brain injury, and I knew that brain injury was going to need some kind of surgical repair. And so I wanted to make sure that I came through it in a way where I was something better still than I was before that. So I said, all right, what if it could be fun and easy? What if I could train myself to look for fun and easy? And sure enough, that's what I see in the world, fun and easy. And I don't just train myself to do this. I train my clients to do this. I actually reworked some of my programming with my family on fun and easy. During the lead up to the brain surgery, I said to my dad, I can't look at your face anymore when you say that this is going to be really hard and brain surgery is what I have to do. And, how else am I going to do this life without having this surgery? And I said, hey, Dad, I'd really love for this to be fun and easy. Would you be willing to join me in fun and easy? And listen, this happened. This is literally what happened. Within a day, we were sitting out to eat after one of the neurosurgery exams. And we're sitting at this restaurant, Japanese restaurant, and we just finished, and they brought us those oranges that you get at the end of the day. And I didn't think anything of it, but the conversation had kind of gone really down and low. And the next thing I know, I look up and my dad has that orange in the middle of his mouth. And he said, would this be okay for talking about what we're talking about, fun and easy?
Yeah.
And sure enough, it shifted the whole conversation for brain surgery. And I really appreciated that. I appreciated that I could think it, that other people around me could think it, and then we could go looking for it. And it works.
Right. Well, for those of you who want a deeper dive into Malia's background, I'm doing a little commercial here. She was actually episode 1 Modern Longevitarian podcast. And so this is the first time she's been on the live show. And so you can go and search that on wherever you get your podcast and search up Modern Longevitarian, and you'll be able to find her episode 2. Episode 1 was a solo episode where I went over living as a modern longevitarian when I had a mere 8 pillars defined at the point. I didn't have the courage to put Wim Hof method in there yet. And I hadn't discovered the benefits of saunas, but anyway, so back to the conversation here is this the brain surgery and this neurolinguistic or NLP programming, is that how you got into biohacking the brain? Is that what led you into this, where we're going to talk about today?
Yes, it's part of it. And the other part of it is that I realized that if I looked at my own day, and if there was 24 hours in a day and I was sleeping, 7 to 8 hours a day, that I was missing a third of my day in terms of productivity. And I love productivity. I'm a highly successful, very creative woman. And so I want to be able to tap into every level of my productivity. And I thought to myself, well, I suppose that there's something I could do, and it would be during my sleep time. Because remember, I think about fun and easy. I wasn't going to give up sleep. No way was I going to give up sleep, because that wouldn't have been fun or easy, frankly. Right? Like I love my sleep. So then I started thinking, well, maybe there's this way to work with the mind as you sleep. And so the second I told myself that, and I could hear my own voice in that, then my mind started looking for those ways. And so now I've spent basically the last 4 years developing a strategy for tapping into the greater self that's sleeping at night. And many people know that, whether you read Chicken Soup for the Soul, Jack Canfield said, my greatest idea came when I in the shower. Well, that's wonderful. But you take 1 shower a day, maybe 2, and it doesn't last for very long. And if you don't get the inspiration, then what?
Right.
then what? Then you're caught wanting for tomorrow.
Right, right. Or are you going to dry your skin out taking a bunch of showers, right? One of the two. My showers aren't that long, right? I'm doing cold showers. It's wintertime here in the Rocky Mountains. You're also in Park City, Utah, and cold showers here are brief, right? I've even brought up a podcast where you interviewed a guy who is doing the research on Wim Hof. That's right. And where you do the hokey pokey. I was doing a little hokey pokey this morning. I tell you, it was chilly. So I didn't come up with any fresh ideas, but there have been times. So we're going to get into this, and I was going to ask this later. Is this similar to like when we have those great ideas in the shower, or for me, driving is something that's really, a meditative piece, because I've been driving starting at age 7, racing go-karts. And so is this similar to tapping into this mental superpower while we're doing other things and we come up with these great ideas?
Well, it's a very similar in the regard that we have to be in a very relaxed state in order for the idea to come through. Mm-hmm. So, there's two sides of the nervous system, as you know, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Of course, parasympathetic is rest, digest, and create. So our creative moments really come in that digestive, relaxed state in the parasympathetic nervous system. It's when we engage the prefrontal cortex portion of the brain. The sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. And that fight or flight nervous system, when you take a cold shower, it's wonderful because in the first cold showers you're taking, you say to the nervous system, it's okay. Right? Right. And so then you're actively working from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. And so that's, in some ways, it's similar in that regard, except that we have the extra dose of fun and easy.
Right.
I don't have to force anything in my sleep. I just close my eyes.
Right.
And we are going to share a process later. So I hope everybody will stay tuned for how to do that in a fun and easy way. So it's really valuable.
So my question is, what are these superpowers that you're talking about? Is it like, like this is not the droid you're looking for? I mean, what are we talking about here? Mental brain hacking for mental superpowers, right? Fun and easy way.
So many people have superpowers, like I said, maybe for math, or maybe there are superpowers for you're a driver and you're very excellent at it and you could take in a lot of information at once. And that was super helpful. Part of that superpower subset there is the superpower of perception, the mental superpower, the genius muscle of perception. So as we see out our eyes this direction, we also have a peripheral view. This is the way the mental perception works. We can look for just one thing, like say we want to buy a car and it's a white VW Bug. We're going to start looking for that VW Bug. But what will happen is the more we put our desire behind, I want a VW Bug, the perception muscle widens. It becomes a peripheral style view. So that's the first superpower, perception. And they're not in any particular order necessarily, but I think it's helpful for us to all know we have eyes and we see things and we can change this muscle immediately. We can start working with this superpower immediately and get a wider peripheral vision. Okay. So the next subset, and I think this is kind of one of your favorites, is will. And you use will a lot, and it's not the same thing as willpower. What is it? What is will?
Yeah, will. I'm on the spot now. Is this what this is? Well, will is basically setting your mind to do something, right? It's to be able to hold your attention onto something. Yes. Is instead of it being like, an external willpower, like, I'm going to, go keto or fast today or all those other things. It's more of an internal focus and saying, this is what I'm doing. And then also having integrity with yourself to be able to finish what you set out to do. Right. Like, for instance, my goal for age 50 is I have 3 physical goals that I want to do. And my will is set on. That's to be able to do a planche push-up, be able to do pistol squats, plural pistol squats with both legs, and be at 9% body fat. Those are the 3 things, right? And so that's what my will is focused on. My diet centered around that. My workout programs and progressions are centered around that. And so that's just, the focus on that. And so that's what really the will is, right? It's an internal focus on where you're going. It may be something you're doing at work. It doesn't have to be a physical or health thing. It could be a project you're working on. It could be any of those things. But like, for instance, the example Bob Proctor uses on this is that when Kennedy wanted to send somebody into space or land on the moon, and he asked the director of NASA or whatever the organization was, said, what would it take to do it? And his response was, only the will to do it, right? Which is the focus of it. And you can build momentum in those areas that you have this will and constant focus on.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of explaining it. Thanks for taking that. And I say it, I just sum it up as the ability to give yourself a command and follow it.
Mm-hmm.
End of story. You are command central.
Right.
Follow the command. And it's not as easy as we think necessarily, but it is like a muscle where we can flex it over and over and it becomes stronger for us. Mm. And so that's a really wonderful mental superpower. Another mental superpower is your memory, and you have a dynamite memory. You can remember names and people and quotes, right? That's one of the strong mental faculties, I think, that if people know you, people know that about you. So, and our memory is actually a really interesting in the usage of how it connects with our emotions. So we don't want to just think memory. We want it to drop down into the center of where our feelings come from, because that increases the amplitude of the thought itself. And that's why memory is a superpower. So if I am, hi there, Sharon. There you go. We really get what we expect. Fun and easy. It's true. And in our memory, this is the amazing thing about memory. You can have memory from the past. Say you have had an amazing Christmas last year and it's 2020 and you're in the middle of COVID and you're wondering how it's going to go. You can bring up those memories from last year or even from 5 years ago or 10 years from now. And you can say, oh, I can feel all that right now. Oh, I can feel the love of my family singing around the Christmas tree. Oh, I can smell the food being prepared in the kitchen. It's my favorite dish. Oh, I can taste the cookies that grandma brings or that my auntie makes. And the second we do that, it inspires this flood of chemicals in the body. And we want to keep that connection going, because the second we've done that, we've connected the mind and the body and the chemicals. That's a biohack trait, big time biohack. Mm-hmm. There's another thing we can do. We can create future memory. And future memory is an amazing ability to think of something in the future, give it all the same 5 sensory information, all the same, but you're thinking it now, and connect chemicals in the body. And then the body will start to live into this. And who does this the most successfully that everybody knows of would be Olympic athletes. You've heard time and time again that Olympic athletes, they visualize standing on the podium. They visualize, you can even see them in, Winter Olympics. There's somebody standing at the top in a tent and they're visualizing their run. Their eyes are closed. Maybe they have music in their ears. It's the same sensory experience for them, and they're seeing themselves make the perfect run. The body doesn't really distinguish between past and future memory and where you currently are in the present due to the chemicals that are provided during the thinking process. So it's a very valuable biohack.
Right. It is, right? I know that from personal experience, when I started out racing go-karts, it took me a long time, I think 8 years to win my first race. And you probably did this when you were a competitive dancer, right? Did you do visualization practice back then?
Well, so I was in the competitive ski racing business. I was a coach. Yeah. So for me, we were doing this all the time.
Mm. Right. And so for me with racing, it was like getting the trophy, right? And then I would see somebody, it's like this guy sitting on his go-kart, Michael Dowell from North Carolina. And he's sitting in his go-kart with his helmet on, with his neck brace on, 15 minutes before the race. And I was like, what he's doing, he's visualizing the track, driving the track. And then I started doing that away from the track. When you race long enough, you can remember what the track was, and at home, because you maybe only race a track once or twice a year. Right. And so how would you do this back before internet, before there were video games, before there were, there was no video games with the tracks to race or any of those type of things. But I'm pulling from my memory now. So you've tagged my memory capability. So I know that there's a study they did at Harvard where they brought people in to play the piano, and they hooked their brains up to all these sensors. And then they actually took them away from the piano and asked them visualizing playing the piano. And they actually, the same parts of their brains lit up. And then another one with, this is really cool too. This has to do with the social brain, or mirror neurons, how they discovered them. And it's a chimpanzee that was in Italy. They're doing a study. It was a hot day. It's during the summer. One of the assistants was actually And the chimpanzee was hooked up to the brain sensors, right? And the chimpanzees, it started lighting up. It started lighting up. And so this assistant was eating gelato, right? And the sensor on the brain the brain started lighting up for the right hand to lift up and the arm to move as if he was eating the gelato, right? That the assistant across the room was over there on this hot summer day in Italy doing that. So it's really wild that you can see somebody across the way eating gelato and that part of your brain starts lighting up. I mean, there's study after study after study. One that Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about. They had people to split people in two groups. One actually had to do the bicep curls, right? The other one for 2 weeks, imagine doing the bicep curls. And the people who imagined doing bicep curls got 13% stronger and they never lifted a weight just by imagining lifting the weight. It's so crazy. And so when you get into what Sharon says, we do really get what we expect. If you're expecting to lift bigger weights, or you're expecting to eat the gelato, or you're expecting to play the piano or drive a go-kart or ski or those type of things, or craft a business plan or presentation or a show like we're doing today, you can visualize that and practice it, and your brain knows no different. It's so freaking wild. So you probably got like 47 things to say about that, right?
Well, I know I want to bring it back to fun and easy, actually, right? So the fun and easy part of this for me is that we're all doing this consistently. If you think about a small child as they're growing, you do it with repetition, just over and over and over. You might say, go put on your shoes, right foot, left foot. Or if you're in the business world and you're just starting out in a job and you get a mentor, and the mentor might say, here's the sequence of events in which we do this thing. Programming is another way. So in programming, you want to think about the abstract concept, but you have to get the coding first, or be able to go to a place where there's coding already in existence to be able to think about the abstract concept. Mm-hmm. So, but we're doing all of this by repetition. It's a key to understanding that the memory is assisting you there. The memory is assisting you with repetition. And the memory is also assisting you in something called impact. So you had an impact when you were a race driver. I had an impact standing on top of a ski hill. Other people had an impact going just to the grade schools and through high school and, maybe into continuing education where they just learned math. So now if I say, what's 1 + 1? They know.
It's two, yeah.
Exactly what it is. You don't have to get out a pencil and a piece of paper and write it out. Your mind goes, it naturally provides the answer. So these are things we want to see as we're actively using them every day in our life. So we're not asking anybody to transition and make a big change or stop what they're doing in their lives and try this. We're not doing that. We're saying, hey, all of this is how you work. So we're working with how you work. Right? Mm. The hardware of your mind works a very specific way. Neurons are the hardware. The mirror neurons are a type of hardware that's all there. It's already there for you, and you've already been flexing it. And if you'd like to flex it in a new way, particularly in sleep, which was what we're talking about here today, then you can do that. And why is sleep so important? I do want to address that real quickly. This has been a rough year for many people in so many different ways. Right? Whether it's the impact of family or the impact of children at home or the impact of losing a job, or maybe it's the impact of having the best year of your life, because there are businesses that have benefited in this way also. So why does sleep matter? Because every single day matters in your life. You can't catch up on sleep. We learned this, and you have some really great information in your sleep book about how that works. We just cannot catch up. And a lot of us think, well, I'll just take a nap later in the afternoon. But it's not closing the gap. It's a Band-Aid. It's just a simple Band-Aid. And the second that something comes up in your life that's a stressor, the Band-Aid literally gets blown off of the brain wiring. Because the brain actually in sleep, that's when it's releasing toxins. That's when it's actually compiling the data from the day and putting it into different kind of subcategories and sections and looking at it in relationship to your entire life. So sleep really is the mission critical part of being alive.
It is. Yeah, it is for sure. When you start doing research on sleep deprivation and you come up with names like Randy Gardner, who stayed up for over 11 days back in 1963 on his, when he's a high school student, 17 years old. He stayed up for 11 days to prove all these, and set the world record, right? And you start, listening to those type of things. But sleep is by far mission critical, right? And it's just there's no one size fits all to sleep, right? And I was even chatting with somebody last night on LinkedIn as I was preparing for our show, and they started talking about sleep, right? No matter what time I go to bed, I wake up at the same time. And I was like, I said, you're just a morning person, right? Embrace that, right? And embrace the fact that you're a morning person. You're going to get up early in the morning. Don't look at yourself negatively because of that, and build your evening routine, or as I would say, your putting down your landing gear, right? Because I use Chuck Yeager's quote, and he just passed away on the 7th at 97 years old, which we can get into that later. That's going to be another whole episode next week. I'm going to talk about Chuck Yeager. But putting down your landing gear, having an evening routine is super important. And so knowing what type of sleeper you are is important. Then you can reverse engineer when you should start doing things like stop drinking caffeine, stop eating, stop exercising, stop consuming blue light, or my blue locker glasses are actually over next to the bed. So those type of things. But it's those things. But yeah, sleep is super important. And we're going to get into. We've kind of gone a little bit longer than I wanted to get to the point where, because the specific mental power you want to talk about, you actually refer to it as mental brownies, right?
Well, so it's really it's not a superpower.
Okay.
So that's why this is important that we just get real clear on the superpowers real quickly.
Okay.
Because mental brownies are the way of accessing the superpowers at night.
Okay.
So, it'd be kind of like you want to be Rocket Man. And the important thing about being Rocket Man is that you have to put on your suit. So right. The superpowers, the 6 mental superpowers, and I'll just finish them real quickly.
Okay.
They're intuition, the imagination, and reason. And we could go into those another time. But what I wanted to say about imagination is that in the imagination, you need to connect with, that's the suit of armor that you put on when you go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
You suit up in that genius power. And then you hit the button like he would do in his suit for liftoff,
right,
or for an outstanding landing. And that liftoff button is the mental brownies button.
Right. I just want to say one thing about imagination. And what you taught me about this is that it's the most abused mental superpower of all, because we can imagine positive things happening in our life, be fun and easy, that, we're going to win the race, find the love of our life, right? Have the best relationship, get the car we want, or a job we want, or any of those type of things. And those things are going to go our way. Or we can imagine worst case scenarios, like all the things are going to go bad in our life. And then we can also start imagining that, and believing the things like, I wasn't born enough, I'm not good enough, nobody would listen to this, nobody would want to hear what I have to say, and I don't have any friends, and everything always goes wrong in my life. And those are the things that we can imagine the wrong way. So be weary or cautious and conscious of your thoughts, because your imagination can really hijack you in a way that puts you in this, your fight or flight, which is not the rest, relax, and creative, nervous system, right? So I just wanted to chime in on that, because that's one of the huge things. I don't want to gloss over imagination, because it's huge.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for that contribution. And I think that what people maybe don't understand about the imaginative part of their thinking, and you mentioned being hijacked by your imagination, it's actually just a thought pattern. Mm-hmm. So again, back to fun and easy, it's just a thought pattern. And maybe if you, for example, in my world, I grew up less than 2 blocks from a fire station. Mm-hmm. And so the fire engine bells were going off, I don't know, maybe every 3 to 5 minutes. And why do I know this? Because I went back to that house 3 years ago. I grew up with my mom and my grandmother. And so my grandmother passed away, and it was time to release that house. And I had never noticed the fire engines until I went back. The place that I live now is very quiet. And so I was immediately just kind of in awe of how often those sirens would turn on. So what happened is my sympathetic nervous system was triggered from the time I was 8 years old living in that house until the time I left at 15. And that pattern got established. Now, I could tell you all the ways that factored into my life, right? Everything that I ever heard, don't go and be courageous, be safe, right? So, here I am, an athlete. I want to stand on the top of mountains, and you can't be afraid to go down an ice-capped racetrack. You can't do that. So those are competing beliefs that occur, and they occur inside of the imagination because somewhere you might have a pattern running. And then that pattern doesn't serve you where you want to go in the future. So this is part of developing, using the imagination as a muscle. So here we go in the mental brownies, right? Let's use the imagination and the muscle for sleep.
Okay.
All right.
So what are mental brownies? How do we use them? And let's just start there. What are mental brownies?
Great question. So I love fun and easy, and I'm going to keep repeating that. And I do so because it is a fun and easy conversation, and repetition works. So hopefully it's starting to sink in now for people that literally, even if you can't see fun and easy, and I have many clients that don't start out with fun and easy. They come to me, they have blocks in imagination. They come to me, they hear the word fun, and they think, oh, Malia, I was an addict, or Malia, I had these habits in the past that I got to change now because they don't align with having a family, all sorts of things like that. So I have every level of client that comes to me. And so when I say fun, they may say, I can't hear fun. And I say, okay, what can you hear? And they say, well, what if it could be simple? Oh, okay.
Okay.
What if it could be simple? So here's a simple solution for going to bed at night. We call it the Aspen technique, ASPEN. All right. Aspen. So before you get ready for your bed at night, you're going to think of something that you'd love to have the answer for tomorrow. So maybe there's a pressing problem in your life about, I don't know, how you're going to get your kids to school when it's time to go back from the COVID timeline. Or maybe there's a pressing question in your life, like, what can I do to find the job of my dreams? There's many different questions that you could ask. Pick one. Let's work with yours.
Okay. What was the question again?
Yep. We're going to go to bed and we're thinking of a question we'd like to know the answer for tomorrow.
Okay. Well, this has actually happened to me. I use this process, right? So it came about, I had something planned for Tuesday, so my show wasn't scheduled at the normal time. I didn't have it, and I moved my guest to next week, which is Emily Fitz Randolph from the Transcendental Meditation Center of Santa Monica. So she's going to be on Monday, and instead of yesterday. And I was like, what am I going to do with the show? Right? You and I talked about coming onto the show on Tuesday. It didn't feel right. You're on Wednesday today. And so I was like, I basically laid to bed and said, what does tomorrow's show look like? Yeah. It's basically the question that I asked. Right. Great. Okay.
Great. So what does tomorrow's show look like? So you're going to ask yourself a very specific question, and we're going to use just 3 different ways to ask that question. Remember, we like simple, we like fun, we like easy, right? So we're going to ask what, who, or where. What, who, or where questions. What, who, or where. We leave how to the logical mind, but what, who, or where will tap into the bigger, broader subconscious mind. Okay.
Correct. And I specifically, I didn't, because I can do a solo episode. I'm a talker, right? I'm a data dumper, right? I very easily could have that's why I said, what does tomorrow's show look like instead of who is going to be on the show, right? So what does that look like?
Okay. Yeah. So what guest, right, could be on the show tomorrow, or however you phrase the question for yourself. You just want to make it a comfortable question for you that would help you advance something in your life.
Right. So that was my A for Aspen, right?
That's A for ask, right? In the Aspen.
Yep. Ask. Yep.
Yeah. And then we want to do a consistent routine next. S. We can sip a glass of water if we want.
Right.
Or we could not, and I don't mean gulp. I'm literally talking about a sip. You could touch the tip of your nose. You could wiggle your fingers like this. So you decide what the next part is. But for us, it's sip. We sip a glass of water. We put it by the side of the bed. And there's many other people who've designed programs that look similar to this, and they do the water conversation. There's a lot of reasons for it and backing in science, but we don't have to talk about that now. So sip the glass of water. Okay. So that establishes a connection with consistency. So you just asked a question and you got very consistent with a routine. So it's kind of memory mnemonic. We're tapping into memory that way, just like we tapped into last Christmas for a feeling. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. Next question.
Right. Well, the next thing is pause, right? P for pause, right?
And we pause. Why do we pause?
Well, we gotta let the magic happen, right? Is
So how
that
long is the pause?
right? Well, it's time to go to sleep, right? This is really what happens, right? So it depends on your sleep quality, but you're looking at 7 to 9 hours optimally, depending on what's going on in your life. If you're sleeping at your optimal time, those type of things, right? So, sleep is, you can take even insomniacs and take them out and to go camping, and without a light, without a car, without, fires or any of those things, and they will automatically, without a clock, move from whatever sleep they were getting up to around 9 hours of sleep, right? So and everybody kind of goes to the same thing, and so the same sleep pattern, because they're now synchronized with the sun, because the sun has blue lights in it. When you wake up in the morning, there's no blue light, which is why the sunset is a different color, similar to what your screen may look like, or your night shift on your phone looks like, or those type of things. So sleep is somewhere in the modern world 7 to 9 hours, and it keeps getting shorter every year because we keep staying up later and taking it for granted, really.
Interesting. So the pause that we're taking is the repose of giving the brain a break from constant incoming stimuli.
Right.
So it's, some people, the pause that refreshes, right? So you know this too, that if you're out in the world and you're having a particularly you got too much sensory information, many people will just close their eyes for a minute, and that will shut down that visual cortex. And the second it does, it stops the information from coming in there. And so now they suddenly can hear better. They suddenly taste differently. They can smell differently. They feel the sensory cold or hot of the room. So there's reasons that we take it down in the pause during sleep. Just as a side note, Thomas Edison used to use a very similar process during napping, and he's considered the most prolific inventor of all time, right? So, or I mean, of course, we could talk about Van Gogh and other people who wrote about inventions.
Yeah, Tesla, or those guys, right?
Absolutely. And similar, we might find out that they have these processes one day when they write about, making of Elon Musk or something like that.
Right.
So, but it's important to know that you have to shut it off. You have to shut it off. And the blood-brain barrier literally reverses during that shut off. We have a lot of organs. All of our organs have an in and out. Science have been wondering for a long time. The brain only seemed to see that the blood was going this direction. There was no out. But then they started doing sleep studies in the last 5 years. And during sleep, the blood-brain barrier reverses and takes the toxins away. So please consider that this is an important part of the pause, right?
Right. It is, right? Because if you don't clean the toxins out, you're looking at Alzheimer's and other degenerative brain diseases and things like that. And that's actually the study is referenced in the sleep book that I wrote, and so it's super important, right? Because you have to get the right amount of deep sleep for that to happen. It can't just be a light sleep. And so you mentioned Edison, and he did polyphasic sleep cycle, Edison and Da Vinci style, where he slept like 4 or 5 hours and then would take a nap every 6 hours, about a 30-minute nap. And what was the process you're referring to? It's like he actually held something in his hand, and when he dropped it into the bucket, it woke him up, but yet he had an idea because he was kind of slipping into the subconscious state, right?
Yeah. So there's Edison's workshop it's preserved in Detroit, in a place called Greenfield Village. And Henry Ford had met Edison right as he was starting his career. And he thought that people should have access to the feeling of places while they were still in existence. So he literally dismantled piece by piece the entire workshop and rebuilt it right there in Greenfield Village. So there's a rocking chair on the second floor. And this is where Edison came up with the light bulb. And there's a rocking chair there. And it said that Edison would sit in the chair, and his mnemonic memory was to put his physical body into a rocking state. And as he rocked, he had an actual physical rock in the palm of his hand. So down, and then what would happen is that was just enough to create the brain waves that will allow him to be in rest, digest, and create. He'd ask himself the question, he'd go into that rocking state, just like we're doing the sip of water before bed. And then what would happen is, before he went into the super state of sleep, the hand would open because you don't hold on to things when you're in sleep. Everything relaxes. And that's what would wake him up, is the rock hitting the bucket. And that's when he would know. And the second he awoke, and this is we're getting to the next part of the Aspen formula, which is the expectancy. The second that he awoke, he expected to have his answer. And you should expect to have your answer too. The second you awake, you should expect to have your answer. And it's okay if you don't. But the second you do, you should expect to have it. So have a notebook or a pen or something handy there so you can write it down right away. And then go through the day and notice how that answered your question. Notice sometimes an image will pop up the second you wake up. Sometimes several words will come the second you wake up. Simple is a great place to start. That's right, Sharon. We love simple. I love simple. Fun and easy, simple. By the way, if you don't like easy because you have some kind of a mental block or personal neurolinguistic to easy, some people use a different word, which is just quickly.
Oh, wow.
All of us know how to move quickly. Oh, we're hurried. We're late. Move quickly.
Fun and quickly, yeah.
So it could be simple.
And quickly. Got it.
Simple and quickly. So fun and easy. If it doesn't work out for you, just keep trying other words. We started this whole conversation by talking about neurolinguistic programming, how the brain loves the sound of your voice. Figure out what works for you that's in that genre. Go to a thesaurus, look up synonyms, do whatever you got to do. But this is the way. This is the way. That's my Mandalorian.
Yeah, this is the way. So when you wake up, you should be expecting. So this is the E in Aspen. So ask, sip, pause, expect. You should be expecting an answer to your question. So I was like, what does the show look like tomorrow? Right. Took a sip of water, put on my mouth tape, right? Because I tape my mouth shut when I sleep. I think because what you said, like your hand opens up, I think our jaw relaxes. So some people's jaws open up and they breathe through their mouth and causes all kind of problems like sympathetic nervous system, stress, fight or flight, sleep apnea, all those type of things, that can go wrong with that. But then I woke up, hours later, and immediately the first thing that came to my mind, I said, Steve Weber, right? And I had no show scheduled. You have to do it at least an hour in advance for LinkedIn and those type of things. And Steve was actually live on his show when I woke up, an American Gumption morning show. So I watched part of his show. He had a shaman on. And then I waited till the show was over, sent him a text and said, hey, when you get a second, can I talk to you? Right. We ended up doing a show yesterday at 1:00 my time here in the mountains, 3:00 for him. And we was on the show live for 45 minutes. And it's like, he's been on the Restaurant General Manager podcast. Now he's been on Modern Longevegetarian. But in between that, I was on his show 3 times, his live show, going over the pillars of being a modern longevetarian. And so it was a great episode, right? And it was just, it fit perfectly. He made it work for us. I'm gracious that he did that. But that process led me to putting on a great show and a special edition later in the day. Right. So that's what happened. And then, so that's the expectation. It gave me the answer, but what happens if you don't get the answer when you wake up? You're the notice. What happens with that?
Well, this is a muscle we can build, a lot like wearing our Rocket Man suit. We can build the mental brownie muscle and kind of trigger it. We can build the muscle of noticing too. So the muscle of noticing is bringing that perception, as I said, into a more expansive view. And there's a lot of ways to talk about it. Some people call it metacognition. Other people call it, your super self, or don't worry about the language. I don't, that's not fun and easy. Okay.
No.
That's not fun and easy. What is fun and easy though, is when you give your brain a task, being acutely aware of the fact that your brain will look for it for you, using that hardware that you already have. Nothing needs to change about you. Not one of the viewers has to change. You can use exactly the same hardware you have, and you can build the muscle with using that hardware. So the noticing muscle is a great muscle to build. Notice what you're noticing. Notice what you're noticing. And people do this all the time. I noticed this billboard and it said this. And then later on, I noticed, I was something I normally love. I was, inspired to try something new. And then you put those all together and boop, there you have the answer to your question. So that noticing muscle is your job to interact with the subconscious mind. So your conscious mind is saying, hey, I am willing to be open to anything you'd like to offer me. How many times, for example, have you walked out the door and you had everything in your hands and then you looked back over your shoulder and you went, oh, I need that. So the body was actually giving you a cue, right? And so that big subconscious field, that wide perception field, used the body for the eyes to make the transition. And then you, oh, thank goodness, then you remember it. Right? So and then later on, you're like, oh, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that.
I'm glad I remembered that, right? Yeah, I'm glad I remembered that, right? Yeah, giving yourself credit, right? Yeah. You know, it's funny. This is actually, you know, this is something that happens automatically. This is proven by science, right? And I've been listening to more and more about sleep because it's such an important thing. Like I found a quote yesterday from Tim Ferriss. He says more and more the top 1% of performers are putting sleep as the top priority of their whole day. It's funny. It happens at night, but he said the whole day. It was like really a funny thing. So it must be building things differently. I mean, like I used to religiously drink coffee at 3:00 in the afternoon. My third cup or my fourth cup would be at 6:00 if I was really tired to make it through a dinner shift working in a restaurant. Right. But now I don't have one. Rarely do I go past noon, understanding the half-life of caffeine. But my point is this, right? What happens is that when we go to sleep, we have about a 16-hour window that we can absorb content. Okay. Then you start getting tired, mentally tired, which makes you physically tired. And then your things start happening, melatonin production, that type of stuff. And there's other things you can do to help you fall asleep and that type of stuff. I'm not getting into all that stuff here, but then the next thing happens is that they have actually, you know, watch people's brains while they sleep, right? And while they're awake. And what happens is our brain replays the memories of the day while we're sleeping at 20x, 20 times faster, the same patterns. And at the same time, it's like this. I don't even think we do this anymore. So we're showing our age a little bit, where we used to have to like defrag computers, right? Remember you had to like run this program once a week to put all the files in the right place and do that. So what happens is that we may think of something consciously, like, oh, this fits, like, you know, like me is, you know, it's like when I'm looking at, you know, I don't know, what Bruce Lee's philosophy, like absorb everything, you know, keep what is useful. So I'm going through the process. What is useful in this, running this restaurant, making this show, determining where it fits into the sleep or the pillars or those type of things. Right. But then what happens is while we're sleeping at this 20x speed, your brain's actually connecting these things with dots. You're not even aware of this in your subconscious that you may have been stored from 20 years ago. That's right. And go, oh, that fits. One of them is from the guy. I had this happen to me one night, one morning as I'm waking up, with the guy behind you, Einstein, right? Well, Einstein, one of his quotes is, your first decision you have to make is whether you live in a friendly or hostile universe. And I also have heard Tony Robbins say, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Well, they're the same quote. And it came to me as I was waking up one morning. They're the same thing. When life happens to you, you're living in a hostile universe. When life is happening for you, you're living in a friendly universe. There's so many things I could tell you. This has happened to me. I wake up and here's an answer to, like, this is the section in the restaurant that set up table 51 at Ruth's Chris Park City. All right. Because we had a problem. We had a problem with the night before with nobody set up table 51. The person had made the reservation a month in advance, called 2 weeks in advance to confirm it, was called, you know, during the day by the host to confirm the reservation was a birthday. He shows up for the reservation and the table's not set up and ready to go. And it's somebody's birthday and they had to wait 15 minutes for us to set it up. How did we miss it? It was just because nobody was assigned to set it up, because the servers didn't know who was going to get it, and whoever gets it wants to set it up, and they don't want to set it up and spend their time on it if they're not going to make money off of it. So we had to assign it to somebody and make it just part of the system. And it came up as like section 3 sets that up every time, no matter what, because they typically get the first table there anyway. And it's just so many different things that come from this particular process that is absolutely amazing. So, and then, you know, well, I think I said all the science, right? I think all the stuff I know. I don't remember the exact studies and the specific things. This is new information that's coming to me this week, but it's super amazing. So What else? What else is there? What have we missed? Is there another? What's the next step in the process, or is that it?
Let's just recap it real quickly. Aspen.
Okay.
Aspen. This is how to activate your mental brownies at night. So why do we want to activate our mental brownies? Because we want to have a delicious sleep. A delicious sleep where maybe you would love more productivity at night, or maybe you've been wrestling with a problem and you'd like the solution. Maybe there's something you've been thinking about for a long time and you're wondering, how do you kick it off the ground and, really start it to gain momentum? So Aspen, we ask a question. We use what, when, or who, or what, where, or who. Where is fine too. And then we sip a drink of water, or touch the end of your nose, or do something that you're going to use as your mnemonic for remembering, body mnemonic. P is take the pause. So now you can sleep. Go to sleep. Rest well, knowing that you have that answer, which is E, expect. Expect that the answer will come to you upon waking, in the morning, or sometime during the very next day. And notice, put your noticer on. It's like a thinking cap. Remember the old thinking cap? Beep. Put that on from the moment you wake your eyes. Notice, I asked this question and I'm going to notice that the answer is here. I'm going to notice the answer is here and available for me. Aspen. So that's activating your mental brownies. And it's a delicious, delicious way to enjoy sleep. Some of us don't sleep because we're so paranoid of missing those hours. Some of us don't sleep because we say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Some of us don't sleep because we say, my kids need me. I got to keep one eye open, right? Some of us don't sleep because we have conditioned the body over time to say we only need 4 hours. The reasons we don't sleep, or we could have just a giant, financial concern on our mind. But the don't sleep part is not going to close the gap for you. Doesn't matter who you are. So we're really encouraging the sleep, and we're encouraging a process at the same time to accomplish a result that you would love. A result you love. And that's why it becomes so delicious. Just, try it tonight, maybe. Experiment a little bit. Try it for the next 5 nights. Maybe then try it for the next 10 nights. See what happens. Write in. Tell us, what did you receive from using the Aspen process? How did it impact your life? And what forward momentum you get? Remember, I'm all about accelerated results, not just some results. You want to see them in your life. You want to be demonstrating in your life that these things work for you. I know they work. My clients know they work. Now it's up to you, whoever you are, to decide if you are going to try it, to do the experiment.
Well, the great thing about this is it's fun, right? Because you don't know what your brain's going to come up with, right? And I'm just tagging on. You just don't know what the answer is going to be, with that. I mean, I had no idea it was going to be section 3 and Ruth's Chris, or I had no idea, all the ideas that have come to me in those certain times. But the other thing is that how easy this is. You've created this triggering process, right, that allows people to tap into something that's already naturally happening and we don't even realize it. There's even new and emerging studies that are starting to do now, where they think that every dream we've ever had is stored somewhere in the brain. We just don't know how to access them, and they influence our behaviors, right? I mean, I had this one as a kid, a recurring nightmare where this gorilla was chasing me through a museum. I don't even know how it was. And they had this old iron bed that it was like, really high off the floor, and I would hide under it. And I would wake up every time that he would walk around the bed, and every time he'd look under, I'd wake up in this sweat. I mean, here I am, 48 years old, and I still remember this dream, right? But imagine every single dream that we have that is somewhere in there. We just don't know how to access it. Or smells can trigger, right? A smell can trigger a memory that you don't even know that you had, a perfume, or, any of those type of things, right? Of anybody, a ex or a friend or high school, because we used to wear polo back in high school. If somebody walks by wearing polo, you're like, oh, that reminds me of high school, right? Or something like that. Go ahead.
Well, as you're saying that, I'm saying to myself, what would be the value in that for other people to be able to access all their dreams? It's kind of a cool thing, to speculate on, or, the hypothetical to say, well, they're all in there. But why would people want to do that? And the reason you want to be part of that, and the reason maybe that accessing those things is because each one holds a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Each one holds a gift for you that in their recycling, you just didn't get the gift. So the brain keeps offering you the opportunity to notice the gift in that friendly universe. Notice the gift that we're offering you here. You asked this and we returned this. And it's that's that hardware communication with the software of you, right? And so we want to really, that's part of this process too, is to notice the gift. Notice the gift that you may already have the answer or the solution to whatever it is, the question that you're asking. And it's going to be up to you to notice it.
Right. You said something to me the other day. You said the answer is inside of you.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And and so knowing that my answer is inside of me, that your answer, not just you, I'm talking yours in general, like anybody listening to this, the answer is inside of you. Right. And that's why you ask a lot of what questions, right? To me and to a lot of your other clients and things like that, where you're asking this because the answer is inside of us. And so what happens is that, there's so many, as you get older, you're, attaining more knowledge, you're remembering things, you're storing things, you're filing things, and your brain's doing this automatically at 20x. And now this is a way to tap into that, to not only solve problems, but create things, right? Tapping into what you call your genius muscle, right? And to be Edison-like, to step into this part where your conscious brain and your subconscious brain are working together, and you're present as a spectator, and even like you get the download right in the morning, you're like, boom. And then I'm noticing these connections as they go on. And I think Steve Jobs said that creativity is connecting unique dots, right? And it's true, right? It really, really is, right? That we as a person or a culture or society can connect these unique dots. And there's this process that, and some people tap into it easier than others, but I love that this is available. This is, we're bumping up on an hour. We've actually been live 59 minutes and 40 seconds as this happened. And, we didn't think we'd have an hour's worth of information, but you get me on a microphone live and I'm going to talk, right? So
I think it really is about value. We have one opportunity through your live show on a daily basis to reach people. And if there's any concern or consideration for why we're here, it's to be very clear that you matter. Mm-hmm. You matter. Every single person matters. And Scott, your desire and your willingness to share additional information with people in a 1-hour time slot every day of the week is very admirable. And, it's a genuine awareness of the mattering of you, that you matter in the world, that your knowledge is valuable, and that the people that you are trying to reach and that are willing to engage with you, they matter too. So, we're so grateful that you took the time to be with us. We're grateful if you think this had value and you try the process. We're super grateful if you decide that you want to share this with someone else, because maybe there would be value for them. And there's something coming, which is so special. Scott's book, Outstanding Landing, is very special. But when he starts this podcast, he starts it as a time to launch. So for me, I just love your message. I love being here with you because I love the message that we can have a time to launch. And every time we send up that rocket, which is our self, our mind, our power, whatever it is, we can actually come down for an outstanding landing. And that's on a daily basis. And if you would share Chuck's quote, just in honor of him today, I would really appreciate that.
Okay. What he said was, if you land a plane and you walk away, that's a good landing. If you land a plane and you can fly it again tomorrow, it's an outstanding landing.
Yeah.
And so the idea around, using that for the book, Outstanding Landing, How to Get the Sleep of Your Dreams, was really like how the landing is more important than the actual takeoff, right? Because, I was writing something yesterday. I was writing actually the outline for a 5-day course on this, and I'm going to be uploading within the next week into Spirituality Gone Wild's thing, which, or the Untamed Club, to have people have access there. And I was like, the first thing you need to do is avoid crash and emergency landings. Yeah. Right. And so you think about that if you're putting yourself in the position of being a plane, and every night you're crashing or having to have an emergency landing, or now naps can make you smarter, but I'm just saying, if you have to like take a nap because you're not getting enough sleep every day, or every night, that's another whole thing. And so, this story, and I have to say it, and I almost said it earlier, on Monday, I finished an email to Chuck Yeager in the morning. I'd started sending this on his website on Sunday. And I opened my computer on Monday morning. It was unfinished. I finished it and I sent it. And I got about 3 hours later, I got an email back from him, from Chuck Yeager's iPhone. It said, sent on my phone. It said, because I was asking him to either because it was 97, whether online or offline, could I, tap into his wisdom about living a long, strong life.
Yeah. He is an
longevitarian. Right. And he's a modern longevitarian. Right. And also sent a quote about modern longevitarian, how it's a word from a book in 1868. I didn't create this word. I thought I did 9 years ago. But longevitarian.com was already taken. So that's why it became modern longevitarian, and owned the domain and paid for it every year since then. And with COVID, it released this. But I got an email back and it said, "Thank you for your interest. I'm retired." That was it. Yeah. And I don't know if it was him or family member or whoever sent it, but I felt like it was his words, no nonsense words, that whether he typed it or not, it was that. And then, I'm more of a night owl. And so I was up and I, flipped over to the news real quick. It was about 12:30 and he had passed away about 6 hours before, about 8 hours after he sent that email was sent. Yeah. And it is it's a pretty surreal experience that happened. So probably next week on one of my solo episodes, I might go through his top 20 quotes and really kind of break down, what he was about, and respect, because, it led to this whole theme of the book, Outstanding Landing, How to Get the Sleep of Your Dreams, based off that quote. And I got a picture of him in front of the Bell X-1, which he's the first pilot to ever. He's a flying ace. He had 13 kills in World War II. Brigadier General. He started as like a mechanic in the Air Force, and made his way up.
The sound barrier.
He was the first pilot to break the sound barrier, go Mach 1 in a level flight. And that wasn't the plane he did it in, was the X-1 that he did it in. So there's a picture of him in front of the X-1. In the book, there's this quote, and so what happens is that, anxiety is, and I want to tie something together here. Anxiety is the main driver in insomnia, or if you're not being able to fall asleep, and even waking people up. Some people can fall asleep, but they wake up in the middle of the night because they're thinking, that their mind's racing, thinking about something. And so one of the tricks to do this or in the book is actually to have a notepad. And you mentioned a notepad, and I want to tie this together, right? You can use a notepad for two things. And going to sleep, to kind of dump everything that's keeping you awake into, right? And I used to have to do this when I was, racing go-karts, had all these ideas. And I found out the reason my brain was racing is I was holding the space for this idea that I had that I didn't want to forget. Now, here's somebody who has an amazing, I have a great memory. I remember everything. Even my wife was like, she'll ask me a question. I'll be like, "I don't remember that." She goes, "Yes, you do." Right. And I do. Right. And it just takes me a minute to access it and find where it is, or maybe to remember how to find this piece of information. And so what happens is you can dump everything in your brain, whether it's an idea or creation or a patent idea you have, or anxiety about paying your phone bill or getting a job or whatever it is, right? You can dump it in that notebook. And also that notebook in the morning can be the place you can write down what the universe gave you in this mental brownie, right? And so that notebook can serve two things. I encourage it to be a notebook because the blue light, even within an hours of going to sleep, will suppress melatonin production. And melatonin is the hormone that actually helps us fall asleep, stay asleep, and also fights cancer while we're sleeping. And so you definitely want melatonin production, to happen, and you don't want to suppress that in any way. So notebook, good old fashioned pen and paper, pencil and paper, however you want to do it, is the best way of doing it. And I also want to say thanks for all your kind words about, the show and me holding the space and for people and doing this on a podcast on steroids. It's live. There's no net. We're swinging without a net, right? And we are doing it 5 days a week, right? And so it's a pretty amazing process for sure.
Yeah. And I love that, your story about Chuck is very moving. You didn't even have to go to sleep to have an idea of who to contact. In your waking hours, it became evident to contact him. And then you did. And then, on Monday, we had an exchange with this man. And the exchange, I just happened to know a little bit more about the exchange, but you really honored his life while he could hear it. Mm. And you honored him by acknowledging you are using the quote in the book. And it's just the analogy. And I just think that's so moving. It's really moving. So even though we give this solution to you as a matter of your asleep moments, don't be surprised if as you cultivate the muscle, it becomes fun and easy, and you have more experiences like Scott just described.
Right. It was very surreal for all that to happen because you didn't expect it, right? You really didn't. On the day that somebody you've never met, you send them a message and you get an email back. Yeah. And, it was in a sense, it was a rejection email, right? I'd love to interview you. Thank you for your interest, but I'm retired. Right. And you're like, okay. And then to find out that, he passed away just hours after that was, my nervous system didn't know what to do with that. I had a boost of energy. I didn't go to sleep for another couple hours. Right. I got up and told my son, who was playing video games, right. And he was like, wow. And the first thing I told my wife the next day was, wow. It was just like this whole thing. But you're right. Tapping into this process of, when you're asleep allows you actually to tap into it more when you're awake, right? You start doing these things, right? Because you can start asking yourself questions, right? And you could do like a mastermind type process. What do I need to do to blank, fill in the blank, generate this amount of money in the next 30 days? What do I need to do to get this job? What do I need to do to have this best relationship? Right. And these things, you start asking yourself these what things, like the coffee enema piece was stop asking yourself why this is happening to you. Ask yourself what you can do to fix the breakout on your face. It led me to 28 coffee enemas in 29 days. And as Dr. Pat Malone says, she says you look 100 years younger now than you did when your face was broken out. Right. So it's, the power of what questions, the power of tapping into what you need to do and connecting these dots. And I hadn't talked about coffee enemas in 17 years. It's a wild thing. So we're over time here. So unless you got anything else to add, I don't want to cut you off. All right.
Well, just this last little piece. So Scott and I are regular people. We sit here before you having lives with families and doing things on a regular basis, like going to the grocery store, driving our cars, trying to sort out, what next month or next week or next year is going to look like. And it's very important, I think, for all of us to acknowledge that this genius zone resides in each of us. And there are ways to tap into it that can be fun and easy. And you can have this too. So I think oftentimes we see people doing things, whether it's Oprah or Jay-Z or Beyonce or whoever it is, some of the, superstars, and we tend to glamorize what's going on there. And the truth is, the nature of it is within you. So if nobody's told you that before, please hear that. Hear that today, hear that from me, hear that from Scott, that's available to you at any moment. And this is just one of the few ways that people are doing it. So it's, you can read all the books you want, or you can come and work with us. That's another opportunity. You can work in our group coaching sessions. You can work in our private coaching sessions. You could just actually read some of the free materials that we have beyond this moment. And if it's of value to you, use it. Because it's inside of your genius zone, and you'll know. We trust that you'll know.
Right.
So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for letting me share this time with your audience, with my audience also that came here today. So I really appreciate that. And then the extended LinkedIn family and Facebook family who have chosen to be on here with us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you very much. And so where can people find you online?
I'm in 2 places. You're welcome to find me at soulfireforyou.com, or you can find me on a podcast, which is peaceamplified.com. The most important thing to me in the world is peace. And I believe peace starts within. So your greater peace is your genius zone. Know that. If you're looking for inner peace, you will find it within first. If you're looking for outer peace, you'll find it within first. So thanks for asking, Scott.
You're welcome. Thanks again for coming on the show. It's been amazing. And as usual, we went into places that I didn't expect to go. And but we also, I think we definitely delivered true value with the not only the things we talked about, sleep, but also with Aspen and the mental brownies and that whole piece, and giving people, for me, a lot of times this is like the Roger Bannister moment where somebody's like done this, and now it's like, no, there's a process, and it gives permission for me to do it as well. Wim Hof was that for me, right? With the Iceman and doing cold exposure, those type of stuff. And so hopefully people can start practicing this as an experiment. Try it for 5 days, 10 days, 90 days. Ask yourself this question, write it down, and see where you go, and see how your genius muscle gets flexed over that time.
Yeah.
So, well, thanks again for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome. Here we go. We're going to wrap it up and play the outro. And the show's title is It's My Friday, which really means it's my day, if you noticed the highlight in there. And if today is your Friday, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Cheers.